Ian Moyse, morning. How are you?
I'm good, Simon. We're both sat at home still, so that time dates when we're doing this recording for obvious reasons.
Yes, amidst COVID-19 for context. Now, let me get this right, just to identify each other. You're the EMEA Sales Director at Natterbox and also techUk Cloud Leadership Committee. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah, amongst a number of things, if you've noticed, where I do speaking for schools and social influence and other bits and bobs. But yeah, my main role is EMEA Sales Director for a cloud telephony provider, Natterbox. We focus in the Salesforce community.
That's right. And we know each other from the sales circuits as well. We just identified two or three that we were sitting about, and then obviously through conversation about 38 other people that we know
Yeah,
or have
yeah,
mutual connections with. It's
yeah.
a big but quite tightly knit industry, isn't it, sales?
Yeah, and I think with social media, the world is flatter than it's ever been before, right? There'll be that's the beauty of it. I think is it's those 7 degrees of connection, and I've managed to make lots of real world connections, not during COVID, obviously, but prior to it, meeting lots of great sales leaders, book authors globally through social, through interacting with content, and then
Yeah.
eventually meeting them in person to the point you then get to know them. So it goes from being a liking someone's tweet, sharing their content, engaging with it, to eventually meeting them and getting to know them. And that's a journey that's open to everyone today. It's making connections.
It is, and I found it so much more. I found it more easy. I found it easier if that's during this period because I don't know what it is. Everyone seems to have become more normal. We're all on a level, and as long as you've got a bit of authenticity in your approach, why wouldn't I just have a chat with you? And like I've said before, I've been in bedrooms, living rooms, sheds. I usually it would be a Regis office at the
Yeah.
back end of somewhere, but now it seems so much more familiar, and I think you can get a lot more done once you have that trust built.
Well, yeah, I've been on a few calls talking with other sales leaders, and something that struck me that I suddenly mentioned, and one of them was, they were talking about building rapport and how you engage. And I said, this is the first time you've probably been in the living room or in the house of a prospective or an existing customer, right? Yeah, they've invited you in. The minute their camera goes on, they've just invited you into their home. So it's a level above being invited to their office. And often you see the kids run in, and we're all dealing with this and this environment. So it's become more personable than ever.
And I know we'll come on to it later, but social influencer in a couple of spaces, two or three spaces. Do we have to be wary of is there a different way we have to look now that we're on Zoom? I mean, what are we looking at? I can only do so much with this backdrop, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
There's not a
Well,
lot.
I won't try to do it. Well, you can. I've been playing with that recently, although you do need to have a nice plain backdrop. But there are loads of simple, cheap plugins like XSplit, VCam, where you can change your background. And some people have seen these. So I've been playing with that so that if you are an environment where, I think the challenge a lot of people are having now is being at home. Not everyone has the luxury to have an isolated place to sit, depending on the age of your kids or pets and your environment. Or there's a lot of workers who are in house shares. They've come out of university and they're in house shares in that situation, which is great until you need to be doing this type of stuff where it's not exactly easy. And people are tolerant, but you want to come across professional. The thing I think has changed is that the first impression now is digital. And what I have been advising people on is to think about while we are engaging. Previously, you might go and see a prospective customer, and they had been in a work environment. They've been busy, they've been to a meeting, they've done this, and you're in reception, they come down and get you, go to a room. They may have intended to check you out prior to you getting there. I'll just look them up on LinkedIn, etc. But they may not have done because of the environment around them. Right now, before we spoke, we were both sat in front of a PC, right? And dialing in and connecting. And you don't know right now if I haven't pulled your LinkedIn and social profile up while you're talking about something and I'm checking something and comparing.
I know you've had a cheeky look because I can see
There
it.
you go.
And I have with you as well, of
Well,
course.
that's my habit, right? So I do
Yeah.
social selling, but I think the propensity that you are going to be checked out by the person you speak to has gone through the roof in this period, because the person you speak to is invariably in front of a PC. Very few people, and I've spoken to others, unless you're going to prove the different, are getting phone calls or making phone calls on an actual phone, because you're sat in front of a PC and your company has probably provided you a Zoom, a Teams or whatever, a Google Hangout, and you're using it with your colleagues or whatever, so, and you're all on the group, and so it's all video.
I would agree with everything you've just said, and I think that leaves massive opportunity for someone just to, if the phone went after this, obviously, but if the phone went, I'd answer it, because it doesn't go very often. And if it's not my mum, I wouldn't know who it was. So I would answer it. So there might be actually opportunity for that direct route.
I agree, because everyone's gone to this platform because of, but necessity in the environment. But what it has done is meant people are going to check you out. So not for this necessarily, but go and check some of the stuff I've done on personal branding online. Search my name in personal branding, because there's some really easy things you can do to make yourself look better online with low or no cost and low or no hardly any time to do it. So why wouldn't you right now? Why wouldn't you? Based on people are more likely they're going to check you.
That's right. There is no reason.
Make yourself look good.
Yeah, it's equivalent of just going out and getting a really nice suit for next to nothing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look, before we start on everything, we've got loads to talk about and cross purposes. Tell us about you, positions that you've had in the past, your passion for sales, how you cut your teeth.
Sure. Yeah, so I'll do it very, very quickly. So been in sales for many, many years. I started in IT technology programming. At age 14, came across a computer. I won't say which one because it will age me, but it wasn't what you see today with nice graphics, and was hooked. Did everything I could to become a programmer at IBM, doing that stuff, and then saw the opportunity to go into sales and saw the shiny, you can get a mobile phone, which was the size of a brick at that point, and car and all the perks were attractive. So I went out and did sales, right? Felt, well, I know what I'm talking about. All I got, so how hard can this be? And went in the deep end. And I moved then in through my career into sales leadership. So I've been in sales leadership for tens of years now. I had the pleasure of working with a lot of people. In fact, a lot of my team have worked for me multiple times. And where I am now, two of my team have worked for me once, twice before, once, three times. And that's one of the things I'm proud of, is that during my career, lots of salespeople have chosen to work for me multiple times in different roles. So hopefully that shows I do something right in the leadership role to develop them, support them, and help them achieve success. And I've worked in cloud technology for the last 14 years. So it's an exciting area to be in, particularly with what we're all going through right now. If we did not have the elasticity of cloud and all the wondrous things it can do, we would not be doing these things, right? If you look at simply the Zoom, the Hangouts, and the Microsoft Teams that I mentioned, they have experienced accelerated, rapid, enormous growth overnight, and they all worked. We didn't see any of them where, oh, well, you need to come back in 3 months because we didn't expect our usage to go from 10 million to 300 million in a month. We weren't ready for that. So, cloud just worked. So we're all in a position where we can use these platforms, and I haven't heard of anyone saying, oh, they've been majorly, they've been slow, they've been crashing. They've worked. But none of those vendors could have predicted the massive demand they were going to get overnight through this situation. So that's one of the lucky things that I think we're in. If this had happened 10 years ago, those people that are lucky enough to be able to work and continue and do this sort of thing, how would they have done it? It would have absolutely have to be on the traditional phone network, and you wouldn't have been, how would you have set up? We were all to jump on a call now with 10 of us in the morning and have a huddle together for your team. How would you have done it?
It's accelerated it completely. It's been one of the major disruptive influences, hasn't it? I mean, it's catapulted their businesses, but it's also completely disrupted and changed whatever the normal is. We were having a conversation before this about people returning back into an office. We'll probably come on to it later. It's just thrown so much up. I mean, I don't really know where to start. Now, in terms of your sales, that's how you got into it. You found a subject that you liked, and then you saw the shiny stuff that salespeople get. So often I hear people starting in maybe different role, marketing, and then watching the sales team, all flash Harry's down the bottom of the office doing something different. You fell into that, and then not fell into it, you chose it. But you've grown a career now, haven't you? Quite a substantial career in sales.
Yeah, and initially, I guess I didn't know what I was getting into, apart from it. I was ambitious. and saw I could probably get more quicker by going into that. And I felt that because I knew my subject and knew what I was talking about, that would be a foundation, and I could learn the sales part. And I'm still learning today. You know, this is something that I look for in salespeople that work with me, that they have a propensity to continue to learn. I'm not baked, is the phrase I'll say. You know, I've learned a lot. I've been through a lot of different journeys and experiences, but so have all my salespeople. They've all worked at different companies. They've had different journeys and experiences than I've had. So they all have a voice. They all have things I can learn from them of how will they handle a particular situation? What's the tactic or solution they come up with? Oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. And the reason is I haven't had the journey that they've had. We've all had a different journey. You've had different experiences. Therefore, you address things differently, right? So if we all got into one of those rooms, those puzzle rooms, we'll all have different skill sets based on the DNA we've now got in us, based on our life journey that we've had to that point in time. So I haven't experienced every single journey you've had and others. So how can I be baked as a salesperson? Because I have a lot of experience that enables me going into a situation to mentor and help a salesperson and to be able to handle the situation myself. So maybe you're less nervous and you come across more, but it doesn't mean I've got every answer. Doesn't mean I've got every approach. Doesn't mean I don't say to people, actually, I think I'd like to think about that and the ways we could handle it, rather than here's 5 answers because I've done it before. There's nothing wrong with that, no matter any point of your career. And recently we've hired a sales coach in who's shaken things up and has brought things to us that I've never come across before, because I've never bumped into him before. And it's opened my eyes to, here's things we've done wrong. And the environment we gave the salespeople was, there's nothing wrong with sticking your hand up and saying, I've been doing that. That's a bad habit. I've been doing that. We're not going to panic, because if we haven't heard this new ways of doing things or new ideas that we just hadn't experienced before, how can you be blamed having not done it?
Well, also, how can you ever develop your proposition? I hear this a lot of the time. See, I cut my teeth in a estate agency back in the day, and everyone was the same mold. We were all the same. It was great fun, but it was very, very obvious to see what they were trying to hire. Now, what you've said brings real authenticity to the proposition that sales is becoming more professional, because it doesn't matter. It's not just bringing someone in from a big enterprise company thinking you've got a big logo or badge behind you, so you must be good. It might equally be getting some entrepreneurial flair from someone who's maybe failed a couple of times, but will bring in that tenacity and that doggedness into what can be quite a challenging sales process sometimes. So it seems all encompassing.
I absolutely agree. And I've interviewed a lot of salespeople continually through my career for roles of bringing them in. And I've witnessed a lot of salespeople who've had successful careers, but are absolutely a square peg. And what I mean by that is they believe they are baked, and the way they've always done it will be the way they always do it, and they're not open to change. And you ask them something about how sales changed over the last 5 years. What have you seen change? Oh, nothing. All the same principles apply. But as a buyer, we have all changed. We have, because the environment we live in has changed. And we didn't change overnight, but we all live now in a world of apps, of Amazon, of mobile, of you can, and we all do it, right? Past few days, we've done a few things at home where you go, I meant to get such and such. That's all right. I'll just order it now.
That's right.
10 o'clock at night, I'll just order it now. Oh, look, it'll be it's here. Delivery tomorrow. There you go.
You know what? I haven't
Free
been to Clinton Cards to get the Father's Day card. You know, this was last week. Well, don't worry. I can do it within 10 minutes on Moonpig, and it's there tomorrow.
Yeah. And it's personalised, and it goes, yeah, absolutely. So the world's changed. So if salespeople, you think, I don't need to change. Well, the buyer's changed. You have changed as a buyer. When you go to buy something, you don't do it the way you used to do it. I bet anything you look it up, you'll check a film review out on IMDb. You'll check the star rating on Amazon before you buy something. You're checking a 59 pence app. Well, what's it only got 1 star. It's 59 pence.
It's a good point.
But I've asked audiences of this, and everyone go, put your hands up if you do this. And everyone thank God it's not just me, right? It's not being stingy. It's the behavior that has now become the norm, has become habitual to us. So if the buyer has changed to do things differently and to research and look things up, you just do it automatically. how can you think you don't have to change as a salesperson?
Yeah, you've just summed it up. I mean, people know what they want before they buy it. They know what they want at the point of buying it. Gone are the days where I would go and search out clothes, car, but no one's got enough time. You do your research and you really go to buy it sometimes. And so really a lot of salespeople can just walk people over the line. But they a lot of the time I see people trying to put processes in place that can actually go, look, I'm here to buy. It's fine. I'm here to buy. But no, you've got to go through this, and we've got to. And you can actually sometimes be more talked out of a deal if someone hasn't developed their skills and honed them to what selling is now, which is obviously solution providing.
Yeah, and typically what you would describe there is the salesperson getting engaged when the customer's already been through 50 to 70% of the buying journey, depending on statute. What's wrong with speaking? I often get this with sales. When salesperson speaks to someone, they go, "Oh yeah, we don't have a project for that. We're not buying." Okay, so you only ever speak to people when you're about to buy something. Well, no. Well, can we not have a conversation? I'm not trying to sell you anything right now. I'm trying to. It's a fact. Like you described, during this environment, people are more receptive to. And I've had many conversations during this with CIOs. Can we just grab half an hour? I'm not going to do a pitch. I'm not going to demo you anything. I'm just interested to see if there's any common ground for us to have a conversation at some point in the future. And maybe we'll find something where I can. And some of them I've just, they've said something. Said, oh, we should check this out. And it might be something personal or even a movie, right? Who knows? It's two humans having a conversation for 30 minutes.
You've hit the nail on the head. For goodness sake, when do people realize we're humans? Go at it at a normal level. Just like you would have talked to someone maybe at school in those days, we build people up, or we think, people think they're better than ever, so they don't, so they've got to go to someone more senior. You never know, if you just deal with people as humans, where that conversation's going to go.
Yeah, and some of them I've had the conversation, there's no common ground. One was with a CIO recently who happened to be fairly local, 20 miles away from where I am. It's local enough, right next town. And I said, well, when this is over, it's a great chat. I really enjoyed speaking to you this morning. Thank you for breaking my morning. When it's over, why don't we grab a coffee? Then we must be passing at some point. Yeah, let's do that. So you build rapport. Who knows if in 5 years' time there might be something we can help each other out on, or we point someone else to me. It's not about I have a product that's right for you right now, today, and if not, I'm not interested in talking to you. We should both have a conversation.
Yeah. And what have you lost? You've had a coffee with someone who's talking about similar things, the interests that you both have.
Exactly.
Now, you must be doing something right. You have been voted UK Sales Director of the Year with our friends at the ISM for the BESMA. Well, that must have been a great accolade to have received.
It was. I've been shortlisted a few times, so I've also been on the losing side, right? And I think that's part of
still a good night,
part of being in sales is tenacity. Too often in the awards, and I've been a judge on lots of awards. And interestingly, with awards, I see people enter, they don't win, they never enter again, and it's like, well, that's like saying in sales, surely there's sales awards. If you go and talk to someone and you don't sell it, you don't stop. You don't not sell, come back later. And how did you get on with that? 2 years later, you had some rapport with them, and it's the same in awards. So anyone listens to this, if you entered awards and didn't win, doesn't mean you can't go up for them again if you've done something good. Just means it wasn't your year. So I'd lost a couple of times as well. I've been shortlisted in them a few times that I didn't win, just to give context. But yeah, I was pleased to win that. I never assume you're going to win anything, a customer bid. You do put your best foot forward, do the best you could possibly do, and a bit more.
Well, there must have been some merit there as well. I think you're being very humble about it. Must have been
hopefully something.
Yeah. Now, you tell us a bit about your position at Natterbox now, and also how you've earned to be on the leadership committee for techUk.
Yeah, so techUk is probably an easy one. That I've been involved and known them for many years, and I've been on the board of a non-exec on a number of different companies around cloud, and been involved in a number of industry bodies like the Federation Against Software Theft, Cloud Industry Forum. So they reached out that they do a refresh, right, of board members, etc. And it was cloud, which is my home base, and I write a lot about it. So part of being on that committee as an industry body is having insight. And there's a number of leading companies on there, Salesforce, Microsoft, Google, etc., is to give input from all different aspects to help guide the UK compute industry. And I'm involved in the cloud piece. So, and also to contribute content, articles, and engagement for that group to give value to the audience and other members. So it's nice to be on. And the other value I get out of doing things like that, rather than having a badge on my name, is also I get to engage and hear the thoughts and input from other peers who've had a different journey. So I get to learn from them. You know, what are their challenges? What are their thoughts? That's an interesting viewpoint. I hadn't heard that. So you get those Chatham House panels and which adds value to me. I learn from those around me as well. So it's not just a giving into. You get stuff back from doing this. And I always recommend to people, if you get opportunity to be on a panel, a board or something like this where you can take part, it's not just what you put in. You get value back from it, and you get better through osmosis from learning from other people's experiences that you haven't had. And the day job is I run the European sales team at Natterbox. We're a cloud telephony provider, as I mentioned, in the Salesforce ecosystem. And it's an interesting time for us because we're watching as more people want to speak to each other than ever before. And more people are looking to move to cloud, and particularly their phone systems, because they've suddenly realized if everyone's working from home, am I getting the phone call from the customer who does phone the office number? How's that worked? And that's not as easy as people may have thought. Anyone that's tried to phone a business that is operational today and has got someone phone, often what I've had is, yep, I'll take the message and I'll get the right person to call you back. So they've gone back to virtually a manual reception because their phone system hasn't enabled and empowered them to be business as unusual.
Yeah, so it must be a busy time. Now,
so yeah, it's been interesting, and we're fortunate. We're in a sector that is positively affected by this.
Yes, and you can't help where you find yourself, can you? You have to make the most of it, just like you would do in the times that we've all had when it's not been so good, perhaps. Now, I know in your role at techUk, you speak to a lot of leaders within those forums. And at Wellity, we normalise the conversation around mental health and well-being, particularly aimed at the sales industry. Now, I know a lot of those companies that you've mentioned obviously have huge sales divisions within them. Is that a conversation that's ever raised by techUk or to the members, or is it something that within sales in general, do you think it is going up the agenda? What's your view on that?
I think it has rocketed up the agenda, and I will tell you why. So I've been, during this period, through being in the fortunate position of social influence and being involved with the ISM, you mentioned the APS and different sales membership bodies, I've been on lots of panels, video panels where you talk, and I've been on a number of them and done some round tables, virtual round tables. And what's been interesting is some of them, the agenda has been how to, for give you an example, how do we generate leads and engage with customers and do this during this period? That's the agenda. That's not where the conversations ended up.
No,
on all of them, consistently, the conversation has accidentally ended. And I've asked others, right, was it just the one I was on? Or, oh no, we had a separate round table. We ended up the same. It's like, interesting. The conversation has ended up with, what are you doing? What's your challenge? And it's always ended up around the people and your team and the staff. And the challenge of working from home, what did you do techie? How are you doing with your people? And that environment, because it's the critical piece right now. And it's naturally the sales leaders, which is an interesting piece, right? We've migrated to it. And one of them I did recently, we had the conversation of, hang on a minute, we're off subject. How did we get here? But it just felt natural. And we're all like, oh yeah, but we all took it there. It wasn't one person with an agenda. It naturally ended up back in talking about your people. How are you managing it with your people? What are you doing? How are you keeping them engaged? And when you're bringing them back, and how are you going to bring them back? Which all relates back to the people.
Yeah, it's the glue that gets us all together. It's the bit that makes us all normal. And that's what well-being is naturally letting the conversation go wherever it goes. You can't, because otherwise you are either trying to think what somebody else wants you to say. And at the moment, it's a leveler. We're all normal. So I'm really glad that techUk are allowing you to take that conversation offline, so to speak, because that conversation is there, obviously, and very powerful. And
I think the conversation, so is going to continue. Right? I think this is whilst it was always duty of care was part of your sales leadership role. I think previously it was around. I'm not so sure people focused on it, and I'm cognizant that I probably didn't, because you got on with the job, right? You got on with making sure you remove obstacles, you know, the management server, what do I need to do to help you be successful, coaching, what training do you need, and is it all this stuff. Now, even down to holiday, down to leave, right, has changed in the discussion with the employee, because previously it would be, tell me if I'm wrong, they would request it, you would maybe debate, well, actually, that's not a good time. Are you sure end of quarter is a good time? Or, oh, actually, we've got 2 other people off at the same time, this sort of thing. Now the conversation I found myself in is talking to them about, you should take some time off. When are you going to use some of your days? For 2 reasons. One is, what we don't want to do is you to have mental burnout, because you're sat at home. You're probably, why are you going to book holiday? You've got nowhere to go, so you're just going to keep working and working, working. And number 2 is, I don't want you getting to the end of the year. What challenge are we going to have? What we don't want to do is come out of COVID and then find you've got 3 months holiday to take. Now things are back to when you can go somewhere, all of you go on holiday for 3 months, right? So there's a balance in respect of the goodness for the business, and sales is the lifeblood of the business, right? If sales doesn't perform, it has an impact on others in the business through no fault of their own. So if sales numbers drop and you don't fight for you and generate the number and successful, it has an impact on all the supporting teams around you of what position are you putting them in. If you're not successful, you don't do your best during these hard times, are you going to put finance in a position where they have to lose 1 or 2 people? Or so, you know, are you going to impact the rest of the business? They're reliant on you even now, even more so than ever.
So Ian, are we saying that well-being can actually affect the bottom line, that it is not just yoga at lunchtime, slippers and fruit bowls? We are actually taking this conversation, which is something music to my ears, which is why I'm grinning ear to ear, is that the well-being is the underlying factor, is actually the fuel that propels the sales divisions and people and members to get better quota and figures and increase.
Well, absolutely. Well, let's take it to its basic, right? If you're I've always said this, if you're a salesperson and you don't believe in what you say, you're not passionate about what you do, the customer is going to feel that, right? You can go through the motions of facts and process, but if it's not in your heart of, I really believe in this, I enjoy it, and they can tell, is the enthusiasm there? That's coming from you as an individual, right? And some of that is based on you being empowered to understand what you're doing, and you have been trained and you can do the demo, and your confidence in doing it. Day one, you're a bit headless chicken in any company, right? Well, what's the process? What do I do? How do I do it?
And you've got to
be competent. You've got to be empowered to be competent, but you're not going to be enthusiastic just because you're competent. You've got to also believe in it and want to be there, to your words, and driven. And if you've got something that's affected you in your personal life, it comes through, right? If you've had a bereavement, may that affect your performance? Absolutely. COVID has affected all of us, and we know it's affected all of us. You know, often the impact someone's had in their, I've had 2 painful bereavements, one recently of my mother in December after a very short being told she had cancer. So we didn't know, right? It was 12 weeks. And how supportive is the business in those periods? Now, often the business doesn't even know something's happened. You just see a change of behavior in an employee. It's how you handle that. Do you have the relationship with that employee and the rapport that either they've shared that with you and said, look, this is going on, and you're aware of it, so you support them through the process? Or, because if they haven't, there's something missing in my view. You know, I felt comfortable in both situations where I've had a bereavement to share it with the business and let them know something had happened, because I felt comfortable in telling them, and also that helped them understand why I'm going to behave differently now through no fault of my own. I don't know how I'm going to behave. I don't know how I'm going to control that or what impact it's going to have, because you don't. That's a human element. But because the business knew, it's then down to the business to how they support you and how they react. And in both instances, I found total support from the business. In fact, where I am now helped me with some bereavement counselling, because it was so quick that my mother was taken. And they've, got me that counselling. They didn't say, well, if you need a day off or 2, or if you need to go and get it, they actually arranged it for me.
And that is exactly what Wellity wants to do. I don't think we could be on more of the same page. Wellbeing is not just the 1980s view of what it was. Wellbeing is providing a platform. That's what we've tried to do. So if you do go through bereavement, or if you do have loss or tragedy, there is a network there, an actual physical solution of people that you can just go, right, who's in 10 miles around me? Where can I seek that? There you go. And that, to me, the quicker you get that done, the better from you as from a personal point of view, because you're getting help when it's needed. But also look at the loyalty, look at the way you talk about this company now. You're telling me, you're telling the Wellity community and your own. I mean, it does instill loyalty, which means you're going to stay with the company, and they're actually going to get more out of you once you're back to full force.
And I think that relates perfectly to the situation lots of companies are going to find themselves in off the back of COVID. So I talked the other day, and I don't understand, I'm not medical, I don't understand any of this stuff, so I'm not professing to put that moniker on any of it, but I was just thinking about it in one of these type of conversations, and it struck me of, are we going to see an equivalent of COVID post traumatic stress disorder? Are we going to see people who they've been at home within the four walls, within whatever stresses they've got in their personal life, you know, whether it be a financial stress because they've been furloughed during this period, or they haven't been able to earn as much, or they've had to look after the kids or elderly relatives, or they've had bereavements during this period. Whatever's happened, how's the business going to support them coming back to work? Are we going to see employees who struggle to be in an office environment coming back? Are they going to have panic attacks because they've been so locked down? Yes, they could get out and have a walk, but it hasn't been the normal for anyone, right? And we don't know also how they've reacted. I know individuals, not at work, but people in the neighborhood here who have been scared about this and have virtually self-isolated through a lot of the period and haven't been out a lot. Now, you can argue that's not the advice that was given, but if that's what they've done, what impact has that had on their mental health? They don't know. They don't understand, and they haven't scientifically done it on a program. They've just reacted to a situation they've been placed in. What's going to happen when we come out of this? You know, our kids, because my wife's an emergency worker, are now back in under some coverage, and they've struggled a little bit. They've been good, but it's unusual. The teaching isn't the same, and the classes aren't the same. And there's a little bit of, I don't want to go back to school. I want home learning because I've had home learning, and it's not their fault. And it's the same with employees. It's not going to be their fault of what they've had to go through, and the worry they've had. They may have been worried about, is there going to be a job for me, even though you've said there is? How well have you communicated them through this period? How well have you supported them through this period?
You've had a 3-month period, or what will be a 4 or 5 month period, where people are worried about their work. They're trying to, it's not work from home. It's working during COVID at home. It's not the same. You don't have the kids and the pressures and everything else. And you just spoke about your children. My eldest, who's 15, has taken a day going back to school. They don't call it going back to school. They say it's a study group. It's an area and a time where kids can just go back. Now, I know, obviously we're fully behind this, because that social interaction with their friends, God, they've been with their parents for 3 months lockdown. I mean, who wants that at 15? So it's more this social side of it as well. And it's that physiological benefits of seeing people, etc. But also, she has found it incredibly hard to work from home, because you tell a kid that's got access to social media, their bedroom and everything else these days, that you have to go and do 4 hours study every day. Whilst they may want to, it's very hard. And I think it's going to be incredibly hard for people to return back to work if their work says, right, next Tuesday, 9 o'clock, everyone's in work, and that's it.
Yeah.
And there's no.
And what direction have you given them during this summer? We've been fortunate. Our CEO's been on calls every single week, an all hands company call, very personable, no official stuff. Here's what we've had advance notice now of our plans ahead. So we're not reliant on what the government has just said this. Now, what's our company going to do in reaction to it? Our company's already made the decision and communicated to all of us globally between now and the end of the year what the plan is, regardless, unless the only change may be is if it locks down even further, if something went the other way. But in terms of going back, we're not rushing back. We've got guidance already that we know is applied, and we're being supported in that. So even if the government said you're back at work tomorrow, we know that our consistent answer across our business is none of us are suddenly going to be all back in the office the next day after the government says it. We're not waiting for the government to tell us something. We already know our plan between now and December. So how much reassuring is that for the staff to have some futurability and know what's going on, rather than having we'll tell you next week, or we'll tell you in a couple of weeks. And that's what panics people even more, I think, is the uncertainty of what's happening tomorrow, what's about to change. We've given them some certainty and laid that out already, which helps.
Well, I know from my downtime, which effectively was the reason why Wellity started, that if someone said depression was thinking about the past, anxiety is worried about the future, and well-being is what you've got in the present. That's the only thing that you can actually change. So you look at anxiety, about people worrying. You've mentioned something there that just seems so easy, that it's just communication, because they're not worried if the government, if they watch the news tonight and it says everyone's back to work next Tuesday, they then don't have to worry, because that communication. Now, what happens? Yes, it's terrible if companies haven't had communication with their staff. There's something gravely wrong there. But if they haven't, what could they be doing right now?
Well, what we've done, I think, and we didn't know all the answers right coming into this, but we quickly adjusted. We shared as a management leadership team, what are you doing with your team? I could do this. So we aggregated our experience and knowledge. So I wasn't put in a position where, Ian, you've got to come up with all the answers exactly how to do this. And our teams did some of this. So we've ended up with every single morning, each separate team. So that, this morning we just had one where our European revenue team, we're all on a call together, and some of it is chit chat. Well, how was the weekend? What did you do? And how was your birthday? And I've just found this program. You all got to see this. So it's the sort of the coming into the office. How are you doing this morning? I'm just getting my coffee. Oh, and chatting over the coffee mugs, right? So we have a call every morning, and some of it leads into and who's got something important on this week. So it's a bit of a mix, but it feels like you all know what's going on. And it's every single morning. Okay, unless you got a call or something else has happened. Some people miss one or other, but it's every morning. We then have a weekly call with the CEO where it's a company update, nice and relaxed. So it gives you a feel for what's going on and then there's all the sub meetings, etc. But we're keeping people engaged, and we've had quiz nights. Some people have arranged different things themselves. We've had one where one of them got a keyboard guy that they know who does music gigs, and he did an online gig for us. Just things to get people engaged. Just think about doing stuff. Don't just leave people out there, because you want the staff to come back, and you want them to come back in a good mental state, that you've supported them during this. You've shown your colours as a company. What's the DNA? What are your company values? Are you demonstrating them through this process? And then how are you going to look after people when they do come back? What support are you going to give them, based on some will need some help of some sort? I think counsellors are going to be really busy after this.
Yes,
there's no doubt about it.
And we need to be aware of that as well, and we need to be signposting people that it is a real thing, because surely we trust our staff now to know that if rather than I did a post the other day, what's more important, a 30 grand increase on your basic, or a couple of days off, flexi time, or your holiday, or working, or counselling vouchers, or something like that. It's someone actually addressing the situation, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, if I may, something that I picked up the other day, because I spoke on something I did a webinar, and some of the subject was around handling this, and so I did a little bit of reading up and checking things just to put some colour around it, so it wasn't just my viewpoint. And I came across something which opened my eyes up to one of the stresses, and it makes total sense. And people I've spoken, it'd be interesting in your reaction. People I've spoken to have suddenly had an epiphany of, oh my God, that explains a lot. So we're on these web discussions right now. There's yourself and me. So firstly, normally we would be sat in a room, or we'd have a meeting, and it'd be 3D, right? We'd sit there, and you've got context around you, and you'll look down at your notepad and you'll glance, and there's nothing wrong with that. When it's like this, it doesn't feel right if I'm doing this while we're talking, right? It doesn't feel real. If it's in a room, it's fine. But it feels rude if I'm not here. So number one is my concentration's on a screen. 2, it's 2D. Let's add this to it. Often, anyone that listens to this, have you been on a call where there's 8 faces on the screen, there's 20, and I've seen everyone posting these, right, on social. Here's our company meeting, here's our today's meeting, and there's 20 faces. The minute you do that, your brain is glancing between the different reactions of what people do. Oh, look, Fred, what's Fred doing? He's vanished. He's an empty seat. And oh, hang on a minute, Sue's speaking to her son. And your brain...
Janice is frozen.
So think about that in a meeting. You don't, when you have a physical meeting, normal world, have 10 people in a meeting and you line them all up so you can look at them all at the same time and look at all their faces. Your brain, when you do this, is interpreting 2D feedback. It works harder. What we're doing now, you and me are working harder. Our brain is working harder, unknowing to us, to interpret the signals, number one, and concentrate on the face. When there's 10 people on it, mayhem going on, because your brain is jump, bump, 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 bump. If that was in a room, you'd glance around, and in doing so, you move from one face. Oh, there's the window. Look, I can see it. Oh, car park, and oh, there's John, and he's speaking. And then there's a slide I'm looking at. Oh, and someone's just popped in with the coffee and biscuits. You've got variety going on in your brain and different depth. The fact it's on here, your brain is working harder. Because I was wondering, why do I come off the end of a day of lots of these and I just feel drained? How's that? I haven't been on a train. I haven't driven into London, had to park. Where is that? Well, and I've spoken to others and everyone's saying, yeah, oh my God, I felt that. That makes sense. That explains it. I couldn't understand it either. That's what we're putting people through right now.
I've heard that the new lunch hour is going to lie down on your bed for 40 minutes and shut your eyes, because actually that's, maybe apart from exercise, that's probably not a bad shout when you're staring at a screen. Just give yourself a rest, and it does feel quite naughty lying on your bed during the day, during a work day. Yeah. But it's probably why I've never thought about that myself. I'm exhausted. Literally. And you get to the point where you think, well, I'm not even sure if I've done anything, because it's all conversation. Your memory then parks that, goes on to the next conversation. Then you get hyped up for the next one. So you only really remember what you've done in the last hour or two. And then you get to the end of the day and think, well, what have I done? And when am I going to get the time to write all that up, and process that, and actually create opportunities out of it?
Yeah. So, you got to think, it isn't just people, to your point, just working from home like they normally would in a normal situation. During one day, they're in a different environment. They've got the extra strains, because normally working from home, I've never been on video as much as I am now. You'd be they'd phone you, right?
Yeah.
The phone would ring and you'd answer it, and that because they didn't know necessarily exactly the way you were. Right now, everyone knows where everyone is, right? So yeah, if I video call one of my team, unless they're on another call, I know they're there. They're gonna be at home. So we're not only has it not been the norm of working from home, it's extra strain we've put on people. So
one of the bits we don't need when we start again. I mean, do you think there'll ever be a need to wear a suit again? Do you think there'll ever be? Obviously, we've learned like things about being punctual. You still have those on Zoom meetings, etc. But are there any bits, do you think, that we just won't need? And should we encourage people to dress the way they want to? Because we all know that that's what we do normally now. We've had 4 months of seeing each other. So now to appear in a suit, although a lot of people might like to wear one, but appear to it may look like you're being unauthentic. And that leads me on to my next point. When we go back, how do we really show our authenticity? Can a sales leader be authentic? Something I mentioned the other day is, what is the definition of a strong leader, now that we know we've all been through this? So I'll start with that umpteen amount of questions.
Yeah, so I think the strong leader piece is, it's too late if you haven't already shown it. Right? You need a lot of catching up to do now. If during this period you have not demonstrated the right type of behaviours and duty of care, has your team not sussed that out already? We're 2-3 months in. Just suddenly when they come back, are you okay? How did you find it? And why didn't you ask me during it? Right? I'm right now talking to a team about, and pushing them to, guys, to take some holiday. What days have you got? Just take a few days here and there, break it up a bit. So that when we come back, and initially the reaction was, a little bit of, well, what, you haven't got anywhere to go. It's like, guys, but think about it. You need to have some downtime. You need to have some downtime. This is more intense than it was before. So take some time in it. Let's work it. You know, you're in a fortunate position that we're all working, but when you take some time off, I know you're gonna be at home. I know you go to the park. I know there's not a lot you can do, but it's still valuable time. You know, I don't expect you to take 3 weeks off and waste your holiday time. But there's a balance, and there's a balance for both sides, the business and yourself. So that it's having those practical conversations. Our HR's also been good, and I've touched base with them and said, you know, I'd like you to have a conversation with each of my team, and not for any reason. I've just touching base. You know, I know Ian's been touching base, but he's directly related to you as a manager. There's a different relationship rapport there, and they might feel more comfortable. I don't know, right? You can always believe, but do I 1000% know they'd feel comfortable telling me something that they might open up to HR about? You know, am I doing everything right? Might they say to HR, well, yeah, Ian's tried, but the way he approached, or he hasn't asked me, and I didn't feel comfortable telling him this, or whatever. Give them the opportunity. There's nothing they've done wrong, because this is unusual. I've not led a team through this circumstance before, so do I know I'm doing everything right? I'm trying to do everything right, and it's important to do, but I've got no context. I've got no contextual point. I'm talking to other sales leaders and hearing what they do and learning. Well, that's interesting. I could do, but there's no perfection to this.
No, and I think you've hit a really good point, which is when team members say, "But I can't go anywhere." Look, you can't. This isn't a physical holiday. This could be a mental holiday. This is a break. Now, I know with this, what we're doing at the moment, I've never ever worked harder, and there are red flags that you have to look out for. But it wasn't until Saturday morning this weekend that my 2 daughters said, "Dad, stop working because it's Father's weekend." And, you know, that hit straight to the core of me. And it's so true. So we ditched the phones, we ditched our digital, anything else. And do you know what? From Saturday afternoon to Sunday night, it was so lovely. I could be present, I could focus. I was looking into their reactions on everything, come out with new ideas. I wasn't, you know, feeling scratchy because I could see 3 notifications on my phone of something else. It is that mental break, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think our lines are blurred. Yeah. No, it's really important. So I know you're in tech, and we've got a lot of tech for good at the moment, and the importance of technology is really coming through, and it's booming. And I know we've talked about leadership as well. What about your own well-being? What about the importance of exercise? Do you think we're going to come out of this with a renewed importance for our own well-being?
It'll be interesting, and I don't know the answer. I think it'll be interesting to see if a number of things, when we come out of this, I've heard people talk about, well, we're going to look at whether or not some companies are saying they're now more receptive and flexible to work from home than they weren't before. It's opened their eyes to the possibility. Some have talked about we're going to reduce our bricks and mortar footprint because we won't need it as much. We'll do hot desking, and we'll allow more work, a mix of work from home. But what is the reality when we come out of this? Because habitually, how many years have people done something in one way? This has been a 3-month gap, right? Have we changed our habits genuinely, or are we going to go back to the old ways? Is there verbiage of this is how we're going to do stuff, but that's talk the talk? Are we going to walk the walk? How many businesses are going to then 2 months in, 3 months in, go, well, gradually ebb back into the normal and then carry on with it? So, and we don't know if this, I think the deciding factor will be if this hits again. Can you imagine, God forbid, the impact on businesses and the economy, etc. But if this happened again mid-2020, I think that would definitely be the right. Businesses, processes, how we do things will change. And the same for the individual. Are we, if the businesses open back up and restaurants open, are we going to, as it slowly gets back to normal, then just take it for granted and fall back into it in a year's time, saying, oh, I forgot about it. Crikey, yeah. And just it all goes back to normal. You know, I think that the tipping point will be if it happens again.
Yeah, and
that's my view. I'm not so sure it's ingrained itself. That I know everyone keeps saying the world has totally changed, it will never be the same again. How do you know that? because the habits that the programmed habits we've all had go back a lot longer than this blip.
I agree. I completely agree. It's a time for change. No one actually knows what they're doing. They're winging it. So it has to come with authenticity and good intentions. That's the only two things that we can actually do. And everyone has to have a degree of flexibility. We look, they're trying. I think the only thing that people will draw the line at is when people don't try. Especially like you said, we're seeing signs of second spikes, etc. We've only got ourselves to blame.
Yep.
As we draw this to a close, we talked about your leadership. We've talked about the sales industry, and obviously, what are the pressures actually? Before we come on to your definition of well-being, I'll prep you with that. You've got a couple of minutes. Before we come into that, what makes the sales industry so different in terms of burnout and the eye that we've got to have on our own health and well-being?
So I think my first reaction would be there's a fundamental driving factor that for a sales role. If you're in a supporting role, you've got maybe you've got your base package. You might have some bonus, which is associated towards KPIs or company performance or etc. But you work hard. But you, how much do non-salespeople, how much can they truly affect their earnings? If you work 3 hours extra, do you get overtime? If it isn't, if you do the 3 hours now or you do them next week, does it make any difference to you personally? Now, there's obviously all the motivational goals, KPI, and all the other stuff, and you're in a drive, and all, but when you take it to the real core of the bottom line, the sales role is, and this is what I'm talking. When I got into sales, my belief was, well, actually, if I was working hard in programming, I was working weekends, doing all this kind of finishing projects 3 months early, but it didn't impact my pay packet. It just impacted your review and how you might progress in your career. In sales, my view was if I can put extra hours in, where over a period of 12 months I work an extra month, can I produce an extra month of sales a year? Because I've just done 13 months in 12. Does that give me the edge? And what impact does that have on what I earn? That's in my control. That's my decision to do it, right? If I don't do it, no one's telling me work extra time. But I twigged, if I do that, customers tend to react quicker. That where you got your RFI in 5 days before everyone else, and far more quality and detail, that's counted towards, might that change my propensity to win? And if I win, I get the earnings off of that, but if I don't win, I get nothing. So I have control to increase my chance to win. Yes, by execution and skills, but also through work effort. Because when I first came into sales, I came, as I said, from being a techie. So I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't have sales experience. So my brain went, one thing I can do though to make up for that is just work harder than every other salesperson out there. So I can directly impact my earnings.
And that's what you think
by working hard. And is that not a dichotomy in what you said? Because am I going to take, every time I take downtime, is there a risk that actually that's impacting my pocket? So it's like I've always said, salespeople, if you think of it in your own way, you're running your own business. And if you run your own business, you impact your own business. If you're not there running your business, what do? You shut it down. You're selling something over the web or eBay or whatever you've got. If you shut down for a week, what impacts that have on your revenue? You tend to work harder. You're entrepreneurial. So I think in sales, because that meant that there is more propensity and risk that you drive yourself into a bad position. I'm not saying that it's more dangerous than any other role for mental health, but I think you're more likely to do it to yourself. I do. I push myself constantly and work hours out of hours.
And when you push yourself, we all are human, so we are all hit by life as well and the adversities that come with it. The difference with sales, I think, is that you still have to maintain that top level. You can't go in for a couple of weeks and do those 10 working days with your head down thinking, no, it's just not in our character. If we're in, we have to perform. We're like SEAL. So the difference in sales is that everyone can go down with life, but our levels of performance, our game face has to be up here all the time in order to be that person around the boardroom table that's always performing and showing up, as they say, and hitting our quota. So the difference is where salespeople, I think, are different.
Yeah, and what I personally have found, hard is the lack of the variety. Because normally in a week I might have gone to, oh, I'm up early, I'm on the road at 6, I'm in London 8:30, client meeting at 9. But you've got London, right? You've got a bit of transport, you've got the journey. Who would ever have thought we'd say we'd missed the journey, right? But the journey gives you variety in what you're seeing, and etc., etc. You've then got the meeting, you've then got where I parked and get back and or grab a sandwich, and the day is broken up. And then the next day you might work from home, the next day you might be in the office, the next day you might be at a conference. It's the variety impact that, what impact does that have on your psyche? Whereas today it's same old, same old. Yes, you're on a web call, but it's a web call with different people, but it's still a web call. It's every day feels the same. It's Groundhog Day.
It is, you're right. And we're only as good as our last month, because we're an industry where as soon as you get to the next month or quarter, you literally wipe the whiteboard, you've got to prove yourself again. That's going to take its turn, because you put yourself forward, you do, like you've alluded to, you do all those hours and extras. There is a social element of your family might want to see you, and everything else that's around you. And then when that goes belly up, you're then fighting that as well. So yeah, I'm not saying we're the only industry, but this is going to lead me on to that definition question. And it goes back to your role at within techUk as well. Incidentally, if you ever needed any sort of well-being conversation on that, we would be delighted to help, because the question to you is,
sure.
Is there enough well-being support for the sales industry?
I don't think there is, and I think there isn't because we didn't know we needed it.
Good answer. Yeah.
Right? If you think about it, HR's there. When do people go to HR? Typically when HR gets involved, and I've had this conversation with HR people, it's when often people think it's when there's something bad. Something bad's going to happen, or it's got to be decided. How many people go to HR and say, do you know what, I'm struggling a little bit with this, and just have that conversation? How many people would ever go to HR and sit in a room and go, yeah, I've just been struggling, I just feel a bit stressed, whatever? Because there's this onus of worry of, is that going to be a mark against me? Do I want them having that against, as opposed to, they could help you.
Yeah, I agree. And the bit that you just said then is the bit that when I'm talking to people, they worry about most. It's like asking your mother-in-law to do your marriage guidance counselling, because you know that they come with good intentions at heart and you go to report your mental health, but you also know that people are there, maybe noting it down, ready to get you at another day, or bring it up, or at least they're going to be have it in the back of their mind.
Well, if COVID's done anything good, I would suggest what it has done, because I hadn't had the conversations in the way that I'd had both upwardly and downwardly in the business around mental health and this type of stuff. I think it's opened the conversation to be absolutely acceptable. And I've been on these panels, as I mentioned, with sales leaders where we've talked about it, and it's being videoed, right? And it's going out like we're doing here. Who would have done that before? Who would have, HR people would have sat on it. There's certain people would have stepped up to that. You would have done because you have a particular interest and involvement. But a lot of people wouldn't. I wouldn't have thought of going, well, I'll step in and talk about the wellness. I talk about sales leadership and sales execution, whatever. But I've ended up talking about this stuff because it's been opened up, it's been forced upon us as an important subject that was there before, but it wasn't being talked about because the context wasn't there to talk about it. Now you talk about it, it's quite happy. Well, I'm worried about people coming back to work after COVID. Now they're going to handle it. There's nothing. It feels normal to talk about it, which I think that's a real tipping point. You're more involved in this than I, but I know there's been mental health has been promoted recently, but I think this is that foundation that it's all going to sit upon.
Yeah, so it's accelerated it, just like this period has accelerated your industry in the cloud and everything else. It's been disruptive. It's also been disruptive to health and well-being, and it's forced it to the top of the agenda. I think that's the difference.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
I agree.
Ian, I've had a lot of your time and I'm very, very grateful because I know how busy you are with various caps that you wear and podcasts and social influencing as well. I think it's, it needs to be added that you're very good. Well, also now, hopefully a social influencer in the health and well-being space within
if you need anything I can help with, if there's anything like this I can help with or introduce you to people, by all means do reach out, because I think it's an important thing that is now on the agenda or on the mind of. I think I always had it on the agenda. It was always there, but it was that, how do I broker that with an employee? How do I But now it's easy because it feels a natural conversation. The stigma, I think, has been removed from the conversation. That would be my final statement, I think.
Right, now, I'm not going to let you get away with this. Ian, what is your definition from your leadership roles, from your own adversity with grief in the family, and from anything else that may have happened in life, as it does, but also your drive within the sales industry? What is your definition of well-being?
Crikey, I'm never going to get this. This is one of those ones I'll think about later. I should have said that. I think as an individual, it's having the balance of work and personal life, positive and negative. And in the work environment is from dealing with a team or management leadership point of view, I think it's is being able to have the conversation and the listening piece. So it falls a lot nicely into the sales skills, right? It's you've got to ask the questions and be able to listen, and then take appropriate action to support the individual in a fair manner. And I think that's the hard bit. But I don't know if that's the best sort of definition, but that's the first thing that came into my head.
The reason we ask this at the end is because it's just your personal view, and everyone's is so different. And it's nice to see your reaction. Your initial reaction was to come at it from an employer's point of view, to really help employees and their cause and to get better. And what I've really loved about this interview is that you take your staff, well-being very seriously. You've talked about holiday and this new currency that we really talk about. It's not just basic and commission. There is this whole other currency, and you've come at it with real authenticity. So I thank you for that. No,
you're welcome. I think as a sales leader, you need to do that because you can't be successful unless your team's successful.
So we know each other from the sales circuits, and you've been incredibly responsive on LinkedIn, and you've given up your time for this. So where can others find you, Ian, for various hats that you wear? Maybe
sure.
Let people know where they can find you.
Sure. So I'll make it easy. 2 easy links to go to: ianmoyse.co.uk and ianmoyse.cloud, and that will take you to my LinkedIn and my Twitter profile. Those are the 2 that people most commonly reach out and follow me on.
Great. And is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap this up?
No, I think thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I think it's an important subject, as I say, that is now far more discussed, and anyone listening who hasn't done something about this, now's the time to do it. This to me, this shows the colour, your true colour of how you care about your employees.
Right. Perfect. Thanks again, Ian.
Cool.
Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Cheers, Simon.